Good morning and welcome to Waper Unitarian Universalist Church. We're delighted to have you here, whether you're in person or attending virtually. It's good to be together, a community of youth, adults, and children, sharing the values of courage, reverence, and compassion. I'm Cecilia Dodge, my pronouns are she, her, and I'm a member of our board of directors. If you're accompanied by children today, we warmly welcome your whole family. We invite you to explore our Soul Work Center, where you can explore different activities designed to help all ages engage actively with today's worship service. If you have a joy or sorrow you would like to share in the meditation, please add it to our meditation bowl, which is in the Soul Work Center, or in the chat box before the opening hymn. Please make sure to gain consent before you put someone's full name in the bowl. For those online, our cyber social hour starts 5 minutes after the postlude. In the building, our social hour is once again a hub of connection, informal conversation, and cookies. This week, you'll find a special invitation to dive deeper in today's theme through activities for all ages, including art, play, story, and conversation. You can also find tables and information about the upcoming events. We hope that you'll check it out. If you're looking for a short and structured time of connection and community, our formalized small group conversations are still happening. Please grab your coffee and then find your way to the Emerson alcove. Once again, once a small group has gathered, we will have 20 minutes of focused sharing. Are you interested in learning more about our congregation and beginning the path to membership? The first class in our membership series, hosted by Reverend Jack, will be today from 12:30 to 2. If you're planning to join via Zoom, please RSVP online to receive the link. WBUUC is co-hosting the annual MLK Community Breakfast with Parkview United Church of Christ tomorrow, Monday, January 16th at Parkview. Our dynamic local speaker is Dr. Hetty Lamar Walls, Executive Vice President of Social Responsibility for the YMCA of the North. Music is by the renowned vocal ensemble Cantus. We'll watch a broadcast of the keynote address from the MLK breakfast in Minneapolis, and a light continental breakfast will be served at 6:45 a.m. The program starts at 7:15 a.m. Both are free, but reservations are required. There's a table in the social hall if you'd like more information. The pastoral care team is hosting a presentation of our upcoming caregivers support group on January 19th from 2:30 to 4 p.m., both in person and on Zoom. If you're interested in learning what kind of support you could get from a monthly support group of other caregivers, please attend this presentation. Please contact Reverend Jack for more information. After I finish these announcements, you're invited to join our musicians in singing number 118 in the gray hymnal, This Little Light of Mine, and feel free to clap on the final verse, Building Up a World. Welcome to our church. Together we grow our souls and serve the world in love.
You can stand up too if you want.
I'm gonna let it shine.
Come in. Come into this place which we make holy by our presence. Come in with all your vulnerabilities and strengths, fears and anxieties, loves and hopes. For here you need not hide, nor pretend, nor be anything other than who you are and who you are called to be. Come into this place where we can touch and be touched, heal and be healed, forgive and be forgiven. Come into this place where the ordinary is sanctified, the human is celebrated, the compassionate is expected. Come into this place. Together, we make it a holy place. Welcome, I'm Reverend Roger, and my pronouns are he, him.
My name is Owen Dom, and I use he, him pronouns. When you look at me, you probably see a white kid, one who is in need of a haircut and has been going to this church for the past 6 or 7 years. What you probably don't see is that I'm half Vietnamese. My father is a refugee from the Vietnam War. But like I said earlier, you probably see a white kid before you. Like many of you, I wish that we could all move through the world without having to live with the consequences of the distinctions of race. But the reality is, my ability to pass as white has allowed me to move through the world easier than a person of color. We can't just go through the world pretending that color doesn't exist. That is why I feel that the adoption of the 8th principle would greatly benefit the church. How can we believe in the inherent worth and dignity of every person and not move towards the dismantlement of oppression that takes people's worth and dignity away from them? How can we believe in justice, equity, and compassion in human relations and not want to remove the barriers that keep us from these things? How can we fully accept one another when we may have internalized obstacles that prevent us from doing so? How do we strive for a community with peace, liberty, and justice when our own institutions, whether consciously or unconsciously, prevent the actualization of these ideals? It is one thing to agree with our principles, but it is another to actively strive to achieve them, which I believe the 8th principle will encourage us to do. Today, we light the chalice for the 8th principle.
Good morning, I'm Reverend Sarah. My pronouns are she, her. Join me in our opening words. Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. I invite you now to rise in body or spirit to sing our opening hymn, number 300, with heart and mind. It's in the hardback gray hymnal.
My name is Nico, and my pronouns are they, them. This morning's story is a reimagining of something that actually happened to me, which I'm sharing today in hopes that you will imagine it as I tell it. And in that way, we will create something entirely new together right now, with just one true event told and heard. And then I hope those of you who are in the building today will join us in the social hall after service to explore this story and several related things at some stations for all ages. A couple summers ago, I made some new friends. They're awesome and kind people who do everything they can to make the world a better place. Maybe you have some friends like them too. They inspire me to be my best, and we're always creating and learning new things together. One day, my friends and I came upon a huge, pale blob. It was just sitting there, taking up a whole bunch of space. I'm not sure why, but this blob made me feel sad. I felt small and helpless, and I just wanted to leave and pretend I had never even seen this pale blob. But since my friends are the kind of people who like to right the wrongs they come across, we couldn't just leave this the way it was. So my friends and I asked some neighbors, where did this blob come from? What's it doing here? Does it make you feel anxious too? The answer was almost always, well, it's always been there, but it's too big for anyone to do anything about. So we all just go about our day and pretend that it's not there. Does pretending it's not there help? We would ask. And they'd respond, well, not really, I guess, but I can't do anything about it. None of us really liked the idea that that's the way it's always been, was somehow justification for everyone in the neighborhood having to feel bad all the time. We decided that pretending the blob didn't exist wasn't the solution, and we wanted to do something so our neighbors wouldn't have to feel so worried all the time. But how could we show them that this blob wasn't too big for someone to do something about? We came up with a plan like we often do that was much more a starting point than an answer. We knew it would help, but the three of us couldn't quite figure out the way to the complete solution to this whole blob problem. But we put our starting point plan into action. We called a meeting and gathered together elders and children and healers and weavers and responders. And we asked them to just tell their stories. There was an artist at this meeting too, and as the healer and the weaver and the responder and all the others, including my friends and me, shared our stories, the artist quietly got to work. She took the healer's story about helping everyone feel better, no matter how much or how little money they had, and painted a gentle blue rectangle, weighted and comforting. As the weaver spoke of empowering people to be the best by showing them their best selves, the artist painted a bright yellow ball glittering next to the rectangle. When the responder shared about shivering in the cold, scared but determined to defend the land from a huge great snake, the artist added a splash of green, sudden and strong. The other stories that evening were orange and purple and star-shaped and triangular and huge and small, and I got swept up in the wonderful imagining of it all. And I wasn't the only one. All around me, my neighbors and friends were smiling and leaning on each other, and you could practically touch the feelings of connection and love in that moment. As the last words of the last story left the lips of the last teller, the artist swirled the last stroke of her brush, and we all took a breath in silence, which was broken then by an elder who quietly said, "I don't feel so helpless anymore." That great blob that had brought so much grief and sadness to the neighborhood was no longer. It was physically still there, but the artist had transformed it by using it as a canvas, infusing its pale surface with vibrant color and brilliant shapes. And now everyone who comes upon that blob is reminded of care and community, of warmth and strength and determination, of the people they are connected to. The people of that neighborhood were right, though. That pale blob was far too big for anyone to do anything about. It took the whole community, 3 friends, a healer, a weaver, a responder, an artist, and all the others, and only then was it possible to transform. It is now time for our registered children and youth to head out for some community spiritual growth. Instead of heading to the classrooms today, we'll be right through these doors in the social hall. So please rise in body or spirit to sing them on their way with number 1057 in the teal paperback hymnal, Go Lift It Up.
Join me in the spirit of meditation and prayer. We are gathered together here in person, about 100 folks, and 28 families online. Wherever you are, do what you need to do to find your connection to the earth, your connection to something larger than what you are and who you are. I'm going to share these words with you from the Reverend Wayne Arneson to embody the dream of Martin Luther King Jr. Spirit of life, we have come into each other's presence this day, seeking a part of ourselves, knowing that we do not live alone and knowing we cannot live fully if we are here for ourselves alone. We gather in thanks for the life and ministry of Martin Luther King Jr., not because we wish to worship him as a saint, but because we wish to embody his dream as a possibility that we can make real. We gather with full knowledge of our shortcomings. Our lives set before us many tasks, and often we are not equal to them. We fall short of our own expectations. We find we do not know enough. We are not always patient. We fall into anger. We cannot find strength. We lack the vision. We wait in vain for wisdom. It is painful to acknowledge our shortcomings. Yet we are here, Spirit of Life. We are here. Not always perfect, not always wise, not always just, but wonderfully and mysteriously human and alive. We dedicate this time together to renewing our hope. May the stories we share give us courage. May the songs we sing give us hope. May the stories we share and the words we speak bring us wisdom. And most of all, may the touch of hands, the sight of faces, and the sound of voices lifted up restore us in faith in this world, that we can help make it whole with all of its people united for justice. Amen. We in this community hold each other every week. We hold our joys and sorrows in a tangle, in a mix, and we share specifically this week some names and people to hold. We hold a friend struggling with alcoholism. May you know sobriety again and peace. For Connie, who is struggling with pain, addiction, and family issues. Now we have some gratitudes. Thank you so much for the card ministry, folks. Your words of care and support have been a balm during a weary and hard stretch. We also hold Shirley and hope she can return home soon. And we share again a joy. It's a blessing to be able to share the joy of this congregation again. Such peace and love. Now let us share the joys and sorrows, the names of those we would like to lift up into this community so we can hold them all together. We can hold them. We can hold them together. There is enough for all of them. Amen.
Today's special collection is for Walker West Music Academy, located in the Rondo neighborhood of St. Paul and serving the community for over 30 years. Today, teaching artists provide thousands of hours of music education each year to students of all ability levels. Walker West creates a music learning experience rooted in the African American cultural experience where people of all ages and backgrounds can gather, explore, and grow through music. Here's more about Walker West.
What Walker West is doing is about discovery. It's about expanding what we think we know about music and music education, about culture, and saying there's more that we can do, there's more that we can understand as it relates to music and community building and community development and empowerment and agency.
There is no perfect time or age. Music education can happen anytime, and all we need is the right spirit from you.
I continue to learn, and I continue to be able to have the opportunity to contribute to this very neighborhood-based and at the same time worldwide knowledge-building community.
The possibilities for this institution, not just of what it has been able to do in the past 30 plus years, but what it can and ought to be doing for the next 30 to 40 years is extraordinarily powerful.
This is just the perfect place and the perfect time to find an amazing music education at Walker West.
A few months ago, WBUUC began sending a donation to Walker West each time we sing a hymn from the Negro spiritual tradition. This gift recognizes that although spirituals have greatly contributed to the American music canon, the creators of this music never earned money from sharing their music. Making a donation to an organization with Walker West's mission feels just right. It's a small way that WBUUC is seeking to repair some of the harm of systemic racism. Your donation today helps support the mission to provide accessible music education. Please give generously. We will pass the donation plates now. You can also donate in 3 other ways: on the WBUUC website, send a check or leave a check in the locked box outside the front office, or use the text to give option found in your order of service or in the chat box. Whichever way you give, please indicate the key word Walker. And as the offering baskets are passed, we invite you to join our musicians in singing Draw the Circle Wide. The lyrics are printed on your song sheets that you got with your order of service and in the chat box for those of you on Zoom. Feel free to join as you feel moved. Thanks for your generosity in serving our world together.
Draw the circle
Our reading this morning is from K. Miller, Book of Genesis, from There is an Anger That Moves. Suppose there was a book full of only the word let, from whose clipped sound all things begin, fir and firmament, feather, the first whale. And suppose we could scroll through its pages every day to find and pronounce a let meant only for us. We would stumble through the streets with open books, eyes crossed from too much reading. We would speak in auto rhyme. The world would echo itself. And still we'd continue in rounds saying let and let and let, until even silent dreams had been allowed.
Wade in the water, wade in the water, children, wade in the water. God's gonna trouble the water. Well, who's that yonder, dressed in red? Wade in the water. It must be the children that Moses led. Wade in the water, wade in the water, wade in the water, children, wade in the water. God's gonna trouble the water. Well, who's that yonder, dressed in blue? Wade in the water. It must be the children coming on through. Wade in the water, wade in the water, wade in the water, children, wade in the water. God's gonna trouble the water. Oh, who's that yonder, dressed in black? Wade in the water. It must be the hypocrites turning on back. Wade in the water. Oh, I stepped in the water and that water was cold. Wade in the water. Well, it chills my body, but not my soul. Wade in the water. Wade in the water. Wade in the water, children, wade in the water. God's gonna trouble the water.
Sometimes the 7 principles of Unitarian Universalism feel like a stone foundation upon which our faith is built. This is not what they were meant to be. And so it's important to understand the context and the intention when the 7 principles were created. In the mid-1980s, the Unitarian Universalist Association, that is an organization of UU congregations in the United States and Canada, rewrote the association bylaws. The newly rewritten bylaws contained a statement of key principles broadly affirmed by North American UUs. The 7 principles were intended to be a collective statement of congregations, not actually of individual UUs. Hence the wording, "We, the member congregations of the UUA, covenant to affirm and promote these 7 principles," small p. Their creation culminated a long process of engaging with congregations to figure out what are the key principles that many of us embrace. My sense has always been the principles that they came up with were highly valued by most American Unitarian Universalists in the mid-1980s. That's the context. Rather than serve as a stone foundation for our faith, they were seen as an organic statement that would evolve over time. In fact, the bylaws also included every 5-year or so review process for those principles. It's also important to understand that this was a statement of American and Canadian Unitarian Universalists, not of our global faith. By and large, the 7 principles never really caught on across our global UU faith, with the exception of the Philippines, which almost immediately added an 8th principle: there is God. It's also good to know, historically, that the Canadian Unitarians left the UUA 20 years ago. All this said, the 7 principles really were a pretty good statement, and they were embraced by a lot of Unitarian Universalists in North America. I think maybe they were especially helpful in describing our faith to other people, which is not always an easy thing. And if we're honest, describing our faith to ourselves, which also isn't always easy. And so they took hold. For many people, they did become a sturdy stone foundation for this American UU faith. The 7 principles, capital P. Well, several years ago, it occurred to Paula Cole Jones, a lay leader who was at the time the director of racial and social justice in one of our UUA regions in the United States. It occurred to Paula Cole Jones that it is possible for a Unitarian Universalist to feel like they're living these 7 principles without, in her words, thinking about or dealing much with racism or other oppressions at a systemic level. Well, for hundreds of years, Unitarian Universalists have been pretty adept in the United States at avoiding deep engagement with work against systemic racism. Racism has been like this big pale blob that we have mostly tried to ignore. This is how our denominational press in the early 1900s was the premier publisher of eugenics works. This is how, after leaning more into anti-racism work in the late 1960s, our denomination collectively stepped back from that and went back to mostly ignoring it. This is how the UUA largely ignored anti-racism work in their hiring practices until things blew up in 2017. Unfortunately, the truth is that the 7 principles did not really change the narrative of persistent failure to engage deeply and consistently with anti-racism work. The big blob stubbornly persisted. Most American Unitarian Universalists, who are to this day overwhelmingly white, have the privilege to keep ignoring this blob because it is not trying to kill or maim us. So Paula Cole Jones concluded that we UUs need to make a clear, decisive commitment to work on this big blob in our midst. The fate of our faith may actually depend on it. As our nation becomes more thoroughly diverse and multicultural, our faith remaining largely a white ethnic faith that doesn't really lean consistently into the work of anti-racism, that's going to be a recipe for decline. I've talked with Unitarian Universalists who say, well, we are a white ethnic faith. I remember one person I talked to a few years ago compared our faith to the Polish American Catholic church he grew up in the Chicago area. He said, a Polish American church is best served by focusing on being the best Polish American church it can possibly be. So I said, how did that work for your church you grew up in? Well, the neighborhood changed and it closed. Well, exactly. There's no future in being a white ethnic church in a multicultural nation. Not only is it challenging for non-whites to check out UU congregations and join in if they don't do this work, but there's an increasing number of white people who also don't want to be part of a church that's not consistently and deeply committed to anti-racism. So Paula Cole-Jones' brainstorm was that American UUs need to add an 8th principle that calls us specifically to do this hard work of dismantling racism and other oppressions, starting with ourselves and our congregations. She gained some allies. A grassroots effort began. Some Unitarian Universalist congregations and organizations, including in the state, have already adopted the 8th principle, and many are considering it. Listen to the wording of the 8th principle. We, the member congregations of the UUA, covenant to affirm and promote, that's the old language, journeying toward spiritual wholeness by working to build a diverse and multicultural beloved community by our actions that accountably dismantle racism and other oppressions in ourselves and our institutions. Okay, it's a little bit wordy, but each word has meaning. These words were carefully put together with people of color, Unitarian Universalists in the lead, and I don't think we need to wordsmith it. At the same time, as with our current 7 principles, it can be helpful to have a more succinct statement that helps us comprehend the essence of what a principle is saying. So Nico Van Ostrand on our staff has suggested this succinct version for us to consider along with the longer version. We must work for beloved community and against racism and oppression. I like that. And I would add to it, beginning with us and our church. So we must work for beloved community and against racism and oppression, beginning with ourselves and our church. White Bear UU Church has a group that's been working on this issue for a while. It's called the Facing Race Stirring Committee. The idea is to stir things up. And this group would like this church to adopt the 8th principle. Doing so will be a statement of our intent to prioritize dismantling racism and other oppressions in ourselves and in this church. As Nico talked about in that story, it is a starting point. It is not the answer, but it is a starting point, and we need a better starting point. This starting point says, no matter how painful, no matter how discouraging, we are going to keep doing this work together. We're not going to let that blob just sit there while we ignore it. So I want to say today that this is not an objective sermon about the 8th principle. I'm part of that Facing Race group, and I would like to see this church adopt that principle. I hope, in fact, that every UU congregation and organization adopts it. This feels essential to me, essential for the well-being and the longevity of our faith, and it feels like a moral imperative. So all of us on the Facing Race team hope that this congregation will consider adopting the 8th principle for our own work and advocating for it within the UUA. We hope that there'll be a vote at the June annual meeting of this congregation and that it will overwhelmingly pass. So cards on the table. In short, we need to do this work. If you're interested in learning more about the eighth principle, including a really good kind of summary of frequently asked questions, stop by the table in the social hall after the service. Well, I want to talk for a moment about the vision that animates the eighth principle. It is the vision of beloved community. This vision was talked about a lot by Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. In fact, I would say it is the vision for which he lived and died. Embracing the work that the eighth principle calls us to do feels to me like a way to keep working on the legacy and the dream of Dr. King. So, beloved community, I've ran across a good definition from a staff person at the Madison Church a few years ago. Beloved community happens when people of diverse racial, ethnic, educational, class, gender, sexual orientation, backgrounds, and identities embody an interdependent relationship of love, mutual respect, and care. So all different people coming together to embody an interdependent relationship of love, of mutual respect, and care. Beloved community is a verb. It happens when we're able to do that, when we're able to come together in these interdependent relationships of love, mutual respect, and care. Importantly, the person in Madison added this insight from bell hooks, that beloved community does not resolve the differences between us, it removes privilege. That's important for us to bear in mind. So what the eighth principle seeks to do is to articulate a shared commitment to doing this work, to cultivating relationships, mutual relationships of love, mutual respect, and care. Such relationships really can only happen if we take seriously this work of dismantling racism and other oppressions. Even though for those of us in the dominant culture, this is going to mean letting go of some of our privilege. So I believe that doing this work will make our congregations and us more just. Will doing this work make our congregations more diverse? I don't know, we'll see. What I do know is not doing this work, well, we can see the result. We're not very diverse. So I believe we have to try to do this work. We have to depart from the default for hundreds of years of American Unitarian Universalism. It's time to try something different. So what if? What if White Bear UU Church and American Unitarian Universalism really did this work of dismantling racism and other oppressions in ourselves and in our institutions and churches? What could happen? I love Kai Miller's poem, Book of Genesis, and the way it recasts the Genesis story. Miller, who's a Jamaican poet, lifts up let as the key word in the grand opening of Genesis. Let there be light. And there was light. What if let, Miller's poem asks, what if that's not just a word about God's creativity, but it's an everyday word for us too? What if we could, in the words of that poem, speak in auto rhyme, the world would echo itself, and still we'd continue in rounds saying let, and let, and let, until even silent dreams have been allowed? What if we say, let Dr. King's vision of beloved community be? And what if we really meant it? What would happen? What if it's not just God who creates the world, but each one of us that co-creates the world with God, if there is such a thing as God? What if we, doing this work together, sticking with it even when we make mistakes, what if we can help beloved community take hold in our hearts and in this congregation and in this little part of the world? What would happen? What if it's true? Let there be beloved community, and after hard work, that silent dream, and eventually the reality of beloved community takes hold, at least a bit. The key word in all of this is let. The eighth principle is a way of saying, let the dream of beloved community come alive, and let it begin with us and with our church. May it be so. Our closing hymn today is number 1017, Building a New Way. We do this one a lot because we're building a new way. So I invite you to rise in body or in spirit, wherever you are, and join in singing 1017 in the teal hymnal.
Please join me in our closing words. May peace dwell within our hearts and understanding in our minds. May courage steel our will and love of truth forever guide us.